it's easy to feel futile when a tyrannical overlord is controlling your life. Maybe you're some lonely, medieval peasant toiling in fields for an aristocrat. Or maybe you're stuck in a corporate dead-end job working for manipulative executives. Or maybe you're one of the truly unfortunate people stuck living under a dictator who is as horrible and evil as can be. However your tyrant manifests, please don't despair. History has shown us how to speed up the end of their reign. Be warned, your mileage will vary because not all dictatorships are equal. Just know that if you play your cards right, you can topple that regime sooner than you think. So it's time to learn how history works as we explain how to overthrow a dictator. Step 1. Admit something is wrong. If this seems like an obvious step, then it's only because you're privileged enough to have a free life. For those living under authoritarian regimes, the cost of speaking out is so great that it's a risk to even be honest with yourself. According to North Korean defectors, it is not the case that every citizen is self-conscious about the horrors happening all around them. Yet some eventually listen to their inner voice, which begs the difficult philosophical question: to what extent are citizens complicit in their own brainwashing?
So a lot of times I pinch myself because sometimes I'm really horrified if I wake up from this, that I'm gonna wake up in my living room in North Korea. So it's sometimes that line is very blurry to me.
That's why George Orwell's creation of the thought police is so terrifying. The idea that government agents are concerned about what you think resonates with us on a deep, instinctual level because we all know that the first battleground is always the mind. Alexander Solzhenitsyn explored this notion in his book, The Gulag Archipelago. While imprisoned in the Russian gulags, he noticed how common it was for inmates to defend the dictator that had put them there. What was more shocking was how the reluctance to admit the self-evident truth was also present in inmates who used to be guards of the very same gulags. Step 2. Weigh up your options. The brutal truth is the surest way to remove a dictator is to have an international war. But chances are you won't be in a position to ask NATO to send reinforcements or request the UN intervene with peacekeeping envoys. And even then, a war only works if your side wins. Take careful stock of who your allies are, which nations might support your cause, and any routes to government at your disposal. Is someone in a central agency an old high school friend, or does your uncle know a guy who knows who the secret police are tracking? You need to gather your cards before you can play your hand. Also, consider what footprint you might have and whether government agents could track down your family to use them for negotiating power. Maybe take some time to figure out if dark forces are secretly monitoring you. But be careful. Both Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia had stories of young boys proving their love for their country by reporting their own parents to the state. Even if the dictatorship hasn't made it a law to identify dissenters, it could be that people might turn you in to save their own skin. So only vocalize your dissent when you are certain that you are in company of people that you can trust. Until then, don't go running your mouth or acting carelessly. Once you've weighed up your options, you'll be in a better position to plan your next move. Step 3. Be bold. Non-violence can be a successful way to topple a dictator, but then again, so is assassination. It's up to you to decide what's a bigger risk: leaving a paper trail by communicating with the outside world, or having an assassination attempt go wrong. Either way, you need to be bold. Solzhenitsyn's expose was such a bombshell that readers circulated the book through Samizdat, a form of literary distribution whereby readers would make copies by hand to pass on to somebody else because the state controlled access to printers. Anyone caught carrying dissenting documents would be in a lot of trouble, so the act of handwriting a duplicate was a risk to your life. And that's before you factor in passing on the book to someone who A, might be a member of the secret police, or B, might be tortured into giving you up if they get busted. Of course, a failed assassination is just as bad. Take Frederick Ulbricht. He was the mastermind behind Operation Valkyrie, an attempt by Nazi generals to take out Adolf Hitler. Their plan was to blow up the Führer with a well-placed briefcase bomb and then negotiate a swift peace deal with the Allies. Ulbricht planted the briefcase next to Hitler at a meeting and then excused himself under the pretense of making a phone call. The bomb exploded, so Ulbricht and his co-conspirators moved on to consolidate their power. Unfortunately, another general had unknowingly moved the briefcase away mere seconds before detonation. Spoiler alert, Hitler survived. Had the acid fuse ignited just a moment earlier, history would have been altered and Ulbricht wouldn't have met his end in front of a firing squad. Step 4. Build resistance. A network of dissenting groups willing to work together could be just what your country needs to pry their parasitic dictator away. Just know that there's no turning back after this next step. Shortly after Nazi Germany set up its puppet government in France, a two-star general called Charles de Gaulle made a broadcast from the BBC's HQ in London. His 6-minute speech on June 18, 1940 was an open call to reject Nazi occupation and fight back. Though a lot of citizens believed that the Nazis had already won, it ignited passion in enough people to build a rebellion. You'll need your own literature to counter the propaganda of the regime, spread news, and recruit new members. Just remember that your written word will be read by your enemies as well.
Holy moly!
So avoid revealing the true identities of collaborators or any other sensitive details. Once word is out, it will be easier to hold secret meetings and organize into cells. It will be harder for the regime to break up the resistance if all the groups operate with a degree of anonymity and autonomy. All you need now are some weapons, either from smuggling, stealing, or donations from double agents within your nation's military. Then you're ready for the next step. 5. Perfect the art of sabotage. Being smaller than a government means you are agile and nimble. So forget about fighting them in a gunfight and focus on creative ways to undermine them. A simple act of sabotage to a vital train line can hinder a dictator's infrastructure for months, and a successful boycott campaign can choke your tyrant's financial resources when they need it the most. You can also scare officials and haunt soldiers to lower morale within the ranks. The Gurkhas are soldiers from Nepal whose work in the British Armed Forces has earned them a fearsome reputation. In the past, they have snuck into enemy camps to play nasty pranks just to prove they could have killed their sleeping foes if they wanted. They're so feared that even ISIS doesn't mess with them. When a group of Gurkhas were sent on a mission in Syria to capture ISIS soldiers alive, they only had to turn up at the safe house, declare their presence, and drew their famous curved blades. The Islamist fighters immediately threw out their weapons and surrendered. But if you prefer to work in the shadows, look what's around you to devise ingenious ways to subtly undermine the regime. Consider Oskar Schindler. If you've seen the movie directed by Steven Spielberg, then you know that the industrialist used his membership in the Nazi Party to obscure his sabotaging efforts. He instructed his Jewish factory workers to produce poor quality ammunition for the Nazis, which hindered expansion of the regime at a crucial time in the war. Anytime the SS got suspicious, he bribed them using his vast fortune. They had no idea that a simple act of accepting his luxurious gifts was aiding the downfall of the Third Reich. Step 6. Play mind games. As mentioned, the mind is the first battleground, so turn the tables on your oppressive ruler by employing psychological warfare. When the Allies were preparing an invasion of Sicily, they needed to find a way to mask their intentions. So British intelligence came up with an idea to dress up a tramp's corpse as a fictional captain, plant false evidence on him about an impending invasion of Greece, and get him picked up by German intelligence by releasing him close to the shore. This bold operation was planned decades before profiling became a regular fixture in psychology and criminology. So the masterminds were really ahead of the curve when they planted fake photographs of a fake girlfriend on the fake captain. The plan worked like a charm, and the Germans redirected their forces away from Sicily. All in all, this helped liberate the Italian island faster than anticipated, and with fewer losses. Of course, not everyone has a corpse or a submarine on hand, but you do have a sense of humor. George Orwell said, "A joke is a tiny revolution," though it is hotly contested how effective joke-telling is at undermining power. On one hand, a dictator never gave up office because of a killer knock-knock joke. On the other hand, dictators actively seek out and punish comedians, which would suggest they at least feel like comedy disrupts. In fact, comedians are always the first to be censored, followed soon after by journalists. Ben Lewis's book, Hammer and Tickle, explores the history of joke-telling through communism. It suggests a correlation between jokes reaching the inner circles of power and the breakup of the Soviet Union. As for the Nazis, Rudolf Herzog's book, Dead Funny, reveals that Hitler was so against comedians mocking him that not only was it outlawed at home, but he even pressured neighboring countries to ban German émigrés from mocking him on their stages. One country to go along with the censorship was Switzerland. So much for being neutral. Even if jokes themselves don't erode the power of a dictator, they are effective at transmitting insightful dissent and boosting morale amongst the resistance. So if you're going to risk your lives fighting a violent, evil ruler, then you might as well do it with a smile on your face. Step 7. Revolt. Revolutions cannot be conjured out of thin air by a single individual, but when your resistance reaches a boiling point, then seize the moment to tip the scale for good. The Arab Spring was a series of uprising and armed rebellions against governments across the Arab world. What started in Tunisia as a response to corruption spread to other countries and resulted in the deposing of rulers including Gaddafi and Mubarak. That's because contempt among citizens had been growing for so long that citizens became fearless in one pivotal moment. A similar thing happened in Romania during the 80s, when anger over economic unrest was enough to mobilize anti-communist protests. The scale of the resistance was so strong that even the army turned their guns on the leader, Nicolae Ceausescu. He famously tried to escape on a helicopter during a daring dash across rooftops, but was arrested, tried, and executed on Christmas Day. But be warned, a failed uprising can make things much, much worse. The Iranian Revolution overthrew the Pahlavi dynasty, but at the cost of rights and liberties for the next generation. Trotsky's revolution paved the way for his rival, Stalin, to take the reins of power, and the missteps of the French Revolution ushered in Napoleon, for better or worse. Revolting really is the nuclear option, not just for your own life, but for the life of your country. You better be sure that you have no other option when you take this gamble. Otherwise, you could wind up back at square one. So what's your favorite joke about a political leader? Share it in the comments below. If you like this video and want to know how these guys think, be sure to check out our video on how to become a cult leader. And don't forget to like and subscribe to keep on learning how history works.